Well, it looks like we have the majority of people who are joining, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone. As was mentioned in the last few minutes by some of us, we're thinking about being in Holland. Normally we would be at the Hope DARTEP today, and yeah, it's still good to be together. So welcome to everyone. My name is Lori Burgess, and I'm the chair for DARTEP this year. And I am from Cornerstone University. I also want to acknowledge the other members of the team. Jennifer Clem, if you could maybe show your screen and say something so that we can see you. Jennifer's our chair-elect, so she will be the chair next year.
Hello, everybody. Does that work?
Yep, excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. And then Beth Fighton is our treasurer, and she's also been great to work with, has been working on, she does collecting and make sure to manage our budget. So Beth, can you, well, you'll say hi in a minute, but can you take your video off and say something so we can see you?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hello from Rochester.
All right, very good. And then Brian Filipiak, are you able to show yourself and say hi?
How about if I moment?
So you're breaking up a little bit, and that's okay. We'll move on, and then if you are able to connect, then please do so. And then Sean Koepke is our MDE representative, and do you want to say hi and on or video, show your video, please?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I get to drive the slides today, so just anyone who's speaking, if I haven't advanced to your slide yet, say so. But I wanted to say, Brian may have wanted to say this too, the slide that's up right now, if you could rename yourself in Zoom so that we make sure the breakout rooms get sorted appropriately. So you get to the right one, and there's the directions for that.
Very good. Thank you for that. Those instructions. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, if everyone can take a minute to change their name or add the number, that would be helpful. Okay, well, I just wanted to again introduce the team. I've appreciated working with each of them to make our meetings work and allow them to go smoothly virtually. And so just want to a shout out to them. And then Jennifer Clem will be the chair next year. A couple reminders and just informational items going into the meeting today. Just a reminder to mute your microphones. Also, we will have someone monitoring questions in the chat. Beth Fighton, if you're still willing to do that, that would be helpful.
Happy to help.
Thank you. And many of you completed the survey that we sent out. And it was, I think you received it when we gave you information, the link about today's meeting, and so it's basically a survey to ask, how has it gone virtually? What are some things that the group prefers moving ahead? And I thought I'd just mention a couple of the findings or some of the themes. It was pretty overwhelming that the positives of being in person was being in person, that personal interaction, the community, the networking across the board. That's what people appreciated. And then again, common themes with the negatives of having in-person DARTEP meetings was travel time, the cost, expense, kind of expected. And then we also asked you to talk about the positives of virtual meetings. And then, of course, that kind of correlated to what you said about negatives. Cost effective, you didn't have to travel. Convenience, equitable access, less time commitment, and some people found it to be easier. And then the negatives were, I thought this was kind of comical, but the temptation to multitask. Few people admitted that. And then, of course, not the personal connections. And Zoom fatigue also was brought up. So those were some of the themes. We reviewed that as a team. And as we are moving forward into next year, if you have the agenda in front of you, and if you don't, I'll just let you know the dates. And we'll put these out. We'll give these to you again. We had hoped to do an in-person in the fall and the spring. But October 1st will be our first DARTEP meeting next year. We are going to have it virtual, however, basically because the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration is extending its office work COVID restrictions for another 6 months, and that would extend through October. So that first meeting will be virtual. December 3rd and February 4th will also be virtual. And then I found out from Doug Brashler yesterday that we will be able to go to Hope for the conference April 13th and 14th, and have our DARTEP meeting on April 15th next year. So we'll plan on having that in person, and then of course we'll have to be flexible depending on the state of the pandemic. Let's see. Okay, just another minor change to the agenda today. There was some feedback that we received about job alike meetings and could we extend them. So today we will still end at 12, but I rearranged the time a little bit so that we could have 45 minutes in our job alike meetings rather than 30. So hopefully that will allow us to have more, not feel as rushed during that time. Okay, I think that is, those are some of the bookkeeping things that I wanted to mention. So let's move on, and Sean, can you move to the next slide? Okay, and then the next slide. Okay, so let's start with our organizational reports, and yeah, I think we'll just go ahead, and if you are in charge of a report, just go off mute and you can speak. So Beth, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Sure. Good morning again, everybody. Good to see you all virtually. If you could go ahead and advance, I only have a couple quick slides for our treasurer's report, our last report of the year. So our balance at the end of March is just under $8,000. So we are in good shape. We didn't this year have the typical expenditures of paying for meals at the conferences. And so it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility as we move into next year. And hopefully we can take a look at sponsoring a meal when we're at Hope in April, when we're all in person. Next slide, please. There was a decision made to keep our dues next year at $50 a person. So no change to that. Again, hopefully that money will be used in part to help enjoy a meal together. If you have any other questions about the budget, my contact information is on the next slide. And that is it for this year's DARTEP Treasurer Reports. I'll turn it over to MACD at this time.
All right, well, hello. So I am putting a link in the chat for our next week this time. From 10 to 12, we'll be having our MACD spring meeting. And this is a sorry replacement for the work that we usually do for the accreditation and continuous improvement. But what we've got is an exciting group of people. We have some two AACTE representatives, one talking about membership and one, and then some of the things that are available to us that are new that we haven't been aware of before. And the other person really giving us specific tools we can use with for our government relations and that type of work. And so I really look forward to Ward. He's been giving this presentation to the different acties around the country. And I've talked to some other sister organizations at other states, and they've said it's really a really nice presentation to give some really good actionable items. We've also, in the main theme of the sharing for the members is going to be talking about what do we do to support candidates once they've graduated or as they transition to being teachers in the field. In this particular time, we know that it's unlikely that our completers are getting the same level of clinical experiences that our programs are designed to provide. Well, no, that's not true. They're getting a different level of support. The skills they're learning are remarkable. And this is what I keep reminding our students, that you're learning some skills that people could go their whole career and not have developed with respect to being able to adapt to different situations. But there are other things that have been missing. And so we have people that are going to be sharing. And so what we've done is we're going to be sending out later today or Monday video or information about a panel discussion. And you'll get to watch those ahead of time to kind of get what the individuals would say. Because you know how sometimes let's have a panel discussion and the whole time is taken up by each person really giving their own individual story. So we're going to send out the individual stories and then have a chance for a panel discussion and other people to share what we're doing to try to support our induction teachers. And then finally, we will have a presentation on the new CAPE standards from CAPE. So, so if you can't make it the whole time, if you can just pop in for a little bit, please feel free. This is the advantage of virtual. And as you know, MACD waived dues this year because we just simply didn't need dues. And so as such, you're all members. And so please consider sticking your toe in the water for this experience. And then we will be spending a little bit of time planning for what we're going to do instead of our wonderful June retreat, which usually ends up with a working meeting. And so we'll think about the different work products we would like to get to do and how we can do that without being on Zoom for 3 days straight. And so come up with a plan around that. Thank you very much.
So we can go on to Michigan Association Teacher Educators. Is Joe or Mike, are you available to give an update?
I am here. If I do not see Joe, I'll proceed. Good morning, all. Okay, so my name is Mike McDonald. I'm at Oakland University. Oh, there's Joe. So he saved me. Do you want me to take it, Joe, or you want to go?
Michigan Association, is that Ray?
That is.
Yeah.
Greetings all. How's everybody doing? Okay, so Michigan Association of Teacher Educators, and our big announcement today is the Student Teacher of the Year competition. Thank you to everybody who generously offered both their time and expertise and all the things that go into making that happen. We have 2 winners this year. We'll be reconstructing it for the updating grade bands over time. However, our first winner is the elementary middle grades, and that's Morgan Altergott from Concordia University, hosted by Matt Meyer, Mary Byerly, I believe, and nominated by Sarah Clem von Hohenberg. Our second winner is from Miss Sarah Bassanow, Oakland University, hosted by Jason Rose, and from Casino High School, and nominated by a variety of people, as it turns out, but the one that was the first one in and not listed was Pamela Lynn Klena. So if you happen to see any of those people, those announcements are going out this morning on Facebook, the DARTEP listserv, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you to everybody who participated. And the other thing is that our conference that we were looking at doing in June will be pushed way back to the fall. So stay tuned for that. And thank you for everybody. And I'll turn it back over to who? Joe.
I got you, Ray. Thanks for the handoff. So the Michigan Public Education Deans, we hosted March 3rd a listening session, and it was so nice to see the independent programs took us up on the offer to attend. So we're so grateful to our colleagues from the independent institutions. We had members of the Michigan Department of Education. We had members from the Michigan High School Athletic Association. Dr. Tina Kerr from the Michigan Association of School Administrators, other superintendents from around the state, and athletic directors. And we held a listening session on native mascots, imagery, and logos in our public school settings. And we wanted this conversation because it's still an important issue, and it is the use of that imagery is in 33 schools approximately around the state, and it's troublesome. And we think it's troublesome, not just because of the misrepresentation, but we want our ed prep programs to think about this imagery because we are supposed to be developing candidates at all levels and in all disciplines that adhere to culturally appropriate teaching, social emotional learning, relationship building, all the standards that we have and all the standards as revised that are more explicit about all this work, not to mention our individual content and specialty standards and leadership standards, anti-bullying policies, all these things that we support, right? So we had Melissa Kieswetter from the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, Chairperson Jamie Stuck from the Nottawasepi band, and we had Corey Harbaugh, who's the curriculum director at Paw Paw, Michigan, and they just changed from the R-Skins to the Red Wolves and went through a really interesting process. They chose to focus on curriculum. So we're following up with all those folks and trying to keep advancing this issue. And I guess I would ask you all, as you're revising your programs or thinking about your clinical placements, to really think about what you're doing to help educate sites that still have inappropriate language, and then to what extent are you going to engage with them and how. I think it's important that we drive that conversation. And this is a personal, professional issue for me. I'm the department head for our Center for Native American Studies here on campus and have been involved with this particular issue with the institution right across the street for going on 2 years now. School boards are afraid. They don't know how to discuss this issue deeply. You need a strong leader, and I think superintendent, and you need a strong cast of characters in the wings to support, not wanting to grab the stage. That's been one of the biggest things I've learned from this experience, but we're going to keep driving this forward through the public education deans in partnership with the independent institutions. So we will keep working on that. And then on the issue of equity and access, we also decided to support the state superintendent's request to stop the standardized testing with petition to the U.S. Department of Education. So I think a lot of us were on with that. We know that that's mired in mixed messages or still, move forward except for, so, but we're still in support of that. And then our next meeting, which is in May 5th, we're going to stay on the issue of equity, come back to this issue we discussed in March related to native mascots and imagery, but also we're going to hear from our colleagues at Western Michigan University on a project they've been doing, and a request from Ming Lee and his team to be more purposeful collectively about a strategy to better recruit and support from start to finish a more diverse population of candidates in the teaching profession. So we've decided to focus on equity and access this year, and I think that will continue into the upcoming academic year. Lori, thanks for the airtime.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And again, thank you for inviting MyPie to that meeting. I know I really appreciated being able to be part of that conversation and learn and listen. I am actually going to give the report for MyPie. Susan English and I are co-chairs, and MyPie is the Michigan Independent Educator Preparation Institutions. We held a meeting in March, and basically that meeting focused on grade banding. If you're part of MyPie, we hope to set up another meeting at the end of May, and I'll send an email out about that. Last fall, MyPie submitted a request to have MDE explore offering AQUEP as an accreditation option. And we appreciate MDE's decision to move forward with a pilot. And MDE can provide more information during their update. That is all I have for MyPie. Stein reached out to me about, he's the head of the Consortium of Outstanding Achievement in Teaching with Technology, and he does not have a report to share. So Sean, I'll pass it on to you for the DARTEP business part of our agenda.
Okay, well, I've moved it there. You get to actually do the, as chair, the solicitation of motions and things like that, so.
Oh my goodness.
But I'll advance the slides. There you go.
I keep losing track of my spot on my agenda. Okay. Yes, now we're going to move on to DARTEP business, and that would be me. So the first thing we need to do is the approval of the February 5th, 2021 minutes. And those are located on our website, dartep.org. And as we've done in the past, basically we'll approve the minutes by, if you could please indicate in the comments section if you're opposed to the approval to accept the February 5 minutes as presented. So we'll move forward with that, and basically that would be adopting by consensus. So it is not listed on this section, but I've asked Cynthia Carver if she would be willing to share about the SEL survey results. So I'm going to hand it over to Cynthia.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everybody. I am Cindy Carver at Oakland University. And earlier this year, you received an invitation from me to complete a short survey, a Google survey about your institution's work in social emotional learning. What we were attempting to do was to find out what is the state of teacher preparation programming as it connects to social emotional learning as we build both the SEL competencies that were passed in 2017 in the state, as well as the professional standards, and build those into our new teacher prep programs. I'll be sending a short executive summary out to everybody after today's meeting so that you have it and can draw on it if you find it useful. I wanted to just bring a couple things to your attention. One, we didn't have a great response rate. Though we sent out a couple different reminders to people, we had 26 responses. What's good is those responses represented the range of folks that work within our programs as program leaders, from staff to faculty to administrators. It also represented all the different kinds and sizes of teacher preparation programs that are supported by DARTEP. So it's representative in that way. But one of the things we wondered about some of the very first sets of questions asked about people's familiarity and use of both the SEL competencies and the new professional standards. And there was pretty strong support for respondents feeling that they'd read and understood them. And we're wondering if there's a possibility that those of you that weren't as familiar with them simply just passed over the survey because you didn't have anything to add to it. So that is one thing we're kind of wondering about. I would love to get your feedback. It could also be that we're all just really, really busy this year and we don't have time to do one more survey. So that's just as likely. But if you have some thoughts to help us interpret the data, that would be helpful. The other things I'd point out are that people really relied on the clinical work that we do, our field placements and student teaching, to see evidence of and demonstration of the professional standards. So this is something that I think we as an organization can continue to address, because there's such a huge call for social emotional learning in our schools today. A RAND survey that was done this past year, it was pretty, it really drew attention to the fact that most teachers are saying it's going to be a high priority for our children, and they come back this coming year. So there's a lot that we can do. We have an opportunity in front of us as teacher prep programs to look at how we prepare our candidates to fulfill the expectations of the new professional standards, which do call out SEL, or social emotional learning, trauma-informed instruction, and such, but also to help one another in determining how we might actually go about doing that in a way that is clear in our curriculum for our candidates, whether it be in our classrooms or in our field work, but also some ways to measure and coach our candidates in these really, really important aspects of their work. And I'll just kind of wrap it up and say that this is really widely supported by the whole child initiatives that are coming out of and have been coming out of MDE for the last few years. It's very much supported by Superintendent of Education Rice, and also out of the governor's office. So there's a lot of support for it. We have a really unique opportunity because our social emotional learning vision in Michigan is strong. And now we have an opportunity to really, I think, help one another figure out what this would really look like for our teacher candidates, and how it, and we could be leaders in the country in terms of teacher preparations programs working together to do this really important work and prepare our candidates. So with that, very quick, I'm done. I will make sure that you get a copy of the executive summary. And please, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll type my email into the chat now, and you could also private message me in the chat. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate the update and the work that you have done on that. So yeah, let us move on to the next item on our business is chair-elect nominations and voting. So next year, as I mentioned, Jennifer Clem will move into the chair position, and now we'll be nominating and voting on chair-elect. And just a review of the process. The chair-elect then becomes the chair. So it's a 2-year position when you become the chair in the second year. So we'll begin with nominations. Susan English has been nominated. And so I'll open it up to any other nominations or self-nominations for chair-elect. Please unmute yourself if you would like to make a nomination.
I would like to second the nomination for Susan English.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, I think the protocol is so there's the chair, it goes from the the publics to the independents. And so that's why that it's an independent for next year.
Yes, thank you for that
Would be-
reminder. So in order to make a nomination, it would be someone from an independent. Okay, if there are no other nominations, then we'll do, based on Robert's rules, adopt by consensus. And that would be similar to what we do with the minutes. So please indicate in the comment section if you're opposed to the approval of Susan English. You can send that privately to me or Beth Fighton. Approval of Susan English as chair-elect. If there are no oppositions or only one or two, then the election will stand. Okay, moving on. So Beth Fighton is willing to continue as the treasurer unless someone else would like to volunteer. And that would be in the form of a self-nomination. So please let Beth or me know in the chat. And then if there is someone that's would like to do that position, then we can address that again in October at the next DARTEP meeting. Okay, now, Sean, I believe we're moving on to MDE updates.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. And welcome. I apologize. I didn't change the date on this slide, but I think that's the only error that you'll see in this after going through all of these things. Got a lot of our team with us today, and I'll be introducing them to you in just a bit, or in giving everybody a quick shout out. But I want to do a couple of other things before we do that. And first, a shout out to our 2021-22 Regional Teachers of the Year. That announcement happened earlier between our last meetings, and now these are our 10 nominees for Michigan Teacher of the Year for the next school year. If any of these are graduates of your programs, congratulations. You have distinguished alumni for your program. We hope to bring them to you as we had in the past for a panel in the 21-22 DARTEP meetings. Remember to follow us on social media with our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Michigan Educator. Use hashtags Proud Michigan Educator or hashtag PME for any recognitions that you put out. We can honor. And if you're not subscribed to our Educationally Speaking newsletter, please do that. That goes out once a month to all of our certificated individuals. Next issue should be coming out, I believe, next week. There's a link in your DARTEP written updates to go and sign up. Let's start with MDE staff updates, and I would like to call on the managers of the units to introduce their respective new staff. And our first is Georgia Beard from our our recruitment and recognition unit, headed by Jen Roble. Jen?
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Georgia Beard. She's our new marketing analyst in our unit of recruitment and recognition. And she comes to us from a small university in Ohio, where she has previously 6 years of marketing and communications experience. And she'll oversee all of our marketing and social media and graphic design projects with a little bit of communication sprinkled in there. So if you get a minute, please welcome Georgia. Thanks, Sean.
Great, thank you. The next new staff member, Jason Kalmbach from our data and accountability unit, headed up by Kate Boswell Gallagher. Kate, would you like to do the introduction?
So this is Dr. Jason Kalmbach. I believe he is on the call with us today. He was hired last month and is stepping into the role of the education research consultant within the data and accountability unit. Specifically, Jason will oversee the work we do around the EPI performance score and the Title II reports. So his name has been added to the updates list as a contact on that very last page. We've updated that table with our new staff.
Great, thank you, Kate. Next new staff member, I'd like to introduce Dr. Robert Simmons III. He was working in our professional growth and retention unit. I'd like to pass the mic to Rebecca Brewer, manager of the PGR unit.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Sean. Yes, Robert is here actually with us today. And we are really fortunate to have him join our team as a contracting consultant to lead the work around equity and diversity in the educator workforce. And he's going to talk to you today about the projects that he is leading. Robert actually began his career at Detroit Public Schools and has gone on to do many esteemed projects throughout our country. And he's quite an addition to our team, and we're really lucky to have him. You'll enjoy meeting him in a little bit.
Great, thank you so much. And the last new introduction, I'll pass it back again to Kate Boswell Gallagher in our Data and Accountability Unit.
So this past month has been exciting in that we are finally fully staffed instead of being down 3 people for the past year and a half. So we also have had the pleasure of bringing on Aishu, is how she prefers that you say her name. So that is Aishu. She is our new data analyst that will assist with our data pulling endeavors. We are working hard to try and provide more robust data and be more supportive around technical assistance around data in our unit. So hopefully having her join our team will help us build out our capacity to work with you on data. Specifically, we are hoping she will work on dashboarding. She comes with a lot of skill sets. We are really excited bringing her on the team. If you have any data related questions, we do ask though that you still send them my way, and we will route them appropriately.
Great, thank you, Kate. So in addition to our management team and our new staff that you've been introduced to, I'm going to give a shout out to the other MDE individuals who are with us today. Leah Breen, our office director, is here. In the prep unit, Gina Garner, Bridget McDowell, Dana Utterback are all here. And in our professional educator certification services unit, manager Krista Reed is here, and Beatrice Harrison is also here. And we have 2 additional contractors here who are working across units, but on projects in the prep unit and in the recruitment and recognition unit. Donna Feeblecorn and Holly Carruthers, who are familiar names and faces to DARTEP, now with an MDE brand to them. So here we go. I'm going to pass again now to Kate to tell you a little bit about the EPI performance score.
So slide reads for itself, not major updates. We have been putting things in the written updates as we have made progress over the past 2 years, but wanted to have a chance to say it out loud in case anybody doesn't get to it in the written updates. So the 2021 scores were released. It was exciting. All of our EPIs maintained satisfactory performance, so congratulations to yourselves. With respect to the proposed redesign of our methodology, we were able to get the initial proposal in front of Dr. Rice this January. He approved us to move forward with convening a referent panel of your peers so that we could see what the appropriate threshold would be within the proposed methodology. That was convened in March, and we are currently waiting to get on Dr. Rice's dance card to review the results of that, see if he has any further questions, and to get final approval. So we are hoping that we will get final approval in May. When it occurs, we will send out what your performance would have been for the 2021 year. So all EPIs can be thinking about how it is changing from the current space or the current methodology. And we will also host a webinar to walk through the new score methodology and be able to field any questions that you may have. So fingers crossed, May, we will have more concrete news for you.
Great, thank you, Kate. Next, pass to Holly to tell us about the Future Proud Michigan Educator Program updates.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all again. I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that our grantees were announced in a press release a couple of weeks ago for our Future Proud Michigan Educator Explore programs. There were 44 different grantees who were awarded $10,000 stipends to build toward future teacher programming in their districts. And these programs will happen in the 2021 to 22 school year or the 2022 to 23 school year, making them really ideal partners for your outreach and collaboration. The curriculum that we are building and offering for free is aligned with the professional standards. So you might see some opportunities there that you haven't previously seen. And I know that a lot of the districts are really eager to partner on grow your own programming. So if you're regionally close to any of the awardees, you might want to think about ways to reach out and build or enhance the partnerships that you have right now. And then I also wanted to just make very clear that the Future PME Explore clinical work is another way that you can find alignment or opportunities for clinical hours in your exploratory hours, the 30-hour maximum. So you might find an opportunity to work with any of your local partners to credit forward some of those experiences or to think about how to co-design some of those experiences. So you can reach out to me or you can visit our website if you want to know a little bit more about what's happening with the Future Proud Michigan Educator Explore programming. But I'm really eager to find ways for both the EPPs and the LEAs to, work together, work smarter, not harder, on finding more opportunities to diversify and grow our future teacher workforce. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Wonderful, thank you, Holly. And now, as promised, we turn the mic over to Robert to speak about his work. Robert, just cue me when you want me to move the slides.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Good morning to everyone. Glad to be here for just a brief update on the work. I want to center the work in terms of some relevant comments from Jacqueline Jordan Irvine and Leslie Fenwick, and the moral imperative that we have to address the needs around diversifying the teacher workforce. I also want to name that this is actually not a new issue. It's been written about, studied for quite some time. And so just want to make sure that I acknowledge and affirm those who came before me in this space, including Michelle Foster, who's now at the University of Louisville, Chance Lewis, and Gloria Ladson Billings and others. So just want to name that. Next slide, Sean. So as we're thinking about the work that we're doing to both convene folks and support folks, I just want to highlight this particular study that comes out of the Institute of Labor Economics. This is just one study. It is not my favorite study, but it is just one study because there are both quantitative and qualitative metrics that talk about and speak to the impact that in particular Black teachers make. And so just want to center this one data point as evidence of the impact of Black teachers, especially when we consider the twin pandemics that we're facing. It's going to be even more important to address the issues around teacher diversity. Next slide. So through the Office of Educator Excellence, these are the four buckets of work that I am currently facilitating and leading. I won't read all of that to you, but we'll save time for dialogue as needed. But just name the Educator Diversity Grant that we're working on is going to be released with the goal of targeting 2 school districts to provide some seed funding. Additionally, an Educator Diversity Advisory Board, which I'm excited, we'll have our first meeting next week. And in that advisory group, we're going to have 5 buckets of work that we're going to be focusing on to bring forward recommendations based on this collection of practitioners, both locally and nationally, who have experience in the space as teachers, in particular teachers of color is really important. And so we're going to focus on recruitment strategies at the state level. We're also going to think about teacher certification exam and looking at such things as bias amongst items, and reviewing the current bias review process as well. We're going to also look at the mentoring policies for teachers of color that currently exist, or what are the newest iterations of that should be put forward as recommendations to ISDs. We're also going to be looking at professional development recommendations to support teachers of color who oftentimes are isolated in many ways. And then the fifth bucket will be a review of the Regional Teacher of the Year and the Michigan Teacher of the Year selection process, but also figuring out what are we missing when we do a review and analysis of the diversity of that collection of amazing educators. The third bucket of work is around an educator ambassador program, which will bring forward 10 educators to participate in a community of practice where we are going to support a diverse collection of educators to lead workshops across the state, participate in professional growth opportunities, but also elevate their voices as advocates and co-conspirators for justice as we think about ensuring that not just the state of Michigan, but the entire country is fully aware that coming to the state of Michigan to be a teacher, in particular as a teacher of color, is not only in the best interest of the state, but in the best interest of families and communities. The last piece is a part of our Educator Diversity Advisory Board. I'm excited to have those 5 partners that will be joining the work to offer their particular perspective from working in other spaces. Really excited to have Sharif Al-Mekki from the Center for Black Educator Development and others, as well as Rodney Robinson and Ashley Griffin and others. So that is where we're at. Sean, I don't think there's another slide. I think that's it.
Yep, it's just the 3.
So that's what we're currently up to in the Office of Educator Excellence as it relates to the work that I'm facilitating with my colleague, Rebecca Brewer.
Great, thank you so much. A lot of really exciting work that crosses all of our work, not just at MDE, but in all of our educator preparation institutions too. Okay, a couple of updates to round out the MDE updates. The legislative update, we've unpacked quite a bit in the written updates that went out on Monday, and there are a couple of items we'd like to highlight for you right now. First are some newly introduced bills from between the last time we met and now. One is the student recovery package, and there's 11 tie-barred bills. That means if one gets defeated, they all get defeated, or if they all have to pass in order to take effect. And they have some pretty comprehensive things in them. One replaces M-STEP with a summative assessment, which would be selected by a request for proposals from ISDs. So setting up a commission to do that. Multiple bills in that package modify the educator evaluation system, and from everything from changing the percentage on student growth to eliminating that component, so you can dig into those details in those bills. Another bill requires SAPI to collect student teacher data links and publicly report student performance data at the classroom level. Another allows substitute teaching without credits for the current school year, so 2020-2021 school year. And another bill requires a written summary report. Districts provide these reports to parents in lieu of the other things that they would normally provide back to parents, to even give them sort of a projection of how they are doing compared to how they might have done if COVID weren't a thing, is one of the pieces of it. So a lot of bills, again, introduced, they're just now being referred to committee. So, and a lot of them are about things to take place here in the 2020-2021 school year, which is rapidly coming to a close. There's a bill in the House to create a school counselor grant program. This is a grant to schools to increase the ranks of student counselors. And they can use the money for hiring, for I believe to support training of new school counselors. Be a competitive grant program run by McCann, the Michigan College Access Network. And there's a bill in the Senate to create professional development standards for educators in mental health and mental health awareness. Bills that are moving. One is the Senate Bill 118, reduces the salary deduction for using non-certified teachers if the district comes into compliance within 10 days of notification. And the substitute bill, so as it has gone through the Senate and gone to House committee, now to the House floor, added in a provision that waives deductions, state aid deductions entirely for the current academic year. So if there were teachers that were assigned out of field for an extended period of time, that they would not be, there would be no deductions this year. And so that's heading to a House vote. Other bills of interest, again, are detailed in the DARTEP written updates with a link to the legislative website, so you can sign up for bill updates and see all these bills and track them in real time. And thankfully, unlike in previous DARTEPs, there wasn't something that dropped overnight for me to suddenly jump in on. And if it did, it didn't come across my radar yet. So we'll we will proceed in that fashion. One thing I wanted to highlight for you is a bit of an initiative that I've been working on with Kelly Alvarez in our Office of Educator Services, and that's an IHE collaborative for English learners. This began in fall 2019, and it meets quarterly. And when Kelly set it up, she did invite faculty members from all of the schools that offer English as a second language or bilingual education endorsement programs. And many of our institutions are represented in here, but not all. And we know there's been some faculty changes. We co-host this. The next one is coming up next week. We're working on, one of their projects is working on an English learner toolkit for the general education teacher, a way of further unpacking some of the things in the professional standards where it invokes English learners and understanding linguistic diversity. What are some resources and extra considerations that we can layer in? So it supplements the work that our team has been doing in unpacking those professional standards over the last few weeks. So they've been tinkering with this, and we hope to have that all ready to go soon. We do need more participants in the group and refreshment of it. So there is a sign up link on the slide here, and it goes to a Google form. So your faculty can sign up, and if you're not in the Google Slides, it signed me out, so that's why I just had to do a quick reboot here. I'll put the link to the sign up form here in the chat, so you can share that with any faculty members who might be interested who aren't already participating in it. And then the second ask is about leveraging the seal of biliteracy for teacher preparation and recruitment. The link here, which again I'll put into the chat, is a quick sheet on the seal of biliteracy specifically for higher education institutions. Seal of Biliteracy is K-12 distinction to support and recognize achievement in both English language proficiency and in one or more other languages. And the language proficiency levels align with the World Language Teacher Certification levels for being able to be a world language teacher. So it's quite an exciting distinction. We've awarded several of them over the years, last couple of years, across many, many languages, and would really like to have that seal have added value to candidates people who'd like to become teachers. So some added recruitment, particularly in world languages, in ESL and bilingual education. And this quick sheet gives some different ways in which higher education institutions might capitalize on the seal from incoming students. So it's really quite an exciting thing. It's happened across the nation, and it's just, we've got a lot of languages represented in the system currently. All right, I'd like to turn now over to Gina to talk about that AQUIP pilot that was alluded to earlier.
Good morning, everyone. We have been working, we did get a request, as Lori mentioned, to examine possibly utilizing AQUIP as one of our accreditors. According to our rules, in order to utilize a national accreditor, the state has to have a state agreement of some kind with that accreditor. So we reached out and began talking with AQUIP about creating a pilot. The reason for the pilot is just to make sure that the AQUIP process will provide the same kinds of deep review that we're looking for from an accreditation process. So we want to make sure they're meeting the requirements that we have set out in rule. The pilot is limited to 3 providers because we're making this a kind of a short time frame to kind of get this piece looked at, and if we see that AQUIP does meet those requirements, then we can have a regular agreement with them moving forward. So we want to start with 3 providers. Those 3 providers must hold current non-legacy CAPE accreditation in order for us to be able to make that comparison across. And then the visits, we'd like the visits to be completed by summer of 2025 if possible, again, to kind of expedite the process of that pilot and eventually move on to a regular agreement. If you are interested and would like more information, please contact me. I'm happy to set up a meeting. I can send you the pilot requirements, and we're happy to get going with this.
Great, thank you, Gina. Next, we'd like to provide an update on a 5-year validity policy with MTTC. And if Bridget is comfortable, I'd like to turn the mic over to her to talk a little bit about this.
There we go, there's my mute. Hi, everybody. This is really just an update to what our current practice has been, but MDE did just put out a brief document describing our 5-year validity policy. So there are some exceptions. Of course, our tests are valid for 5 years. Our test scores are valid for 5 years, and this is consistent with practice for any kind of test. Your GRE scores are good for 5 years. LSAT, SAT scores are good for 5 years. There are some occasions, though, where we can extend that period. So one scenario would be if the candidate, say they did pass their exam 5+ years ago, and there's been no significant change to the test framework since they passed. So for example, the standards haven't been updated, the test framework hasn't changed, we haven't gone through some kind of standard setting type update. If nothing like that has happened, and if the provider is confident that the candidate meets the current standards and willingly recommends the candidate for certification, we are happy to make that exception and allow them to go through. I just had somebody contact me last week saying that she passed her test 5 years and 2 weeks ago. So we're really looking to help out, folks like that. If there has been a significant change to the test framework, then they will need to retest. For example, the learning disabilities exam, we just changed that and had a standard setting in January of last year. So that would be something that would probably need to be retested if somebody passed more than 5 years from now. So there's more information in the written updates. There's a link to a quick sheet that we put out. And in the quick sheet, there's a link to a table because obviously the next question would be, how do you know when the standards last changed for a given test? So we link that in there as well. And of course, if you or your colleagues ever have questions, you can contact us anytime. Happy to help.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. And this is really, as Bridget noted, kind of a sort of a public clarification. I know that some institutions have routinely contacted us asking for some, whether somebody really did indeed need to retest, and if something had not changed. And Steve Stedjink used to get a lot of those over the years, and work with Dana Utterback to make sure that people could go through the MOEX application process just fine and not be stopped. So we opted to make that public, but also because there are people who graduated a long time ago, who tested a long time ago, and whose tests, not only are they past the 5-year validity date, but they're 2 or 3 generations away from being up to date in the tests. And we didn't have something out there publicly affirming that, yeah, you tested way back in 1995, but that test has now undergone 3 or 4 significant changes. So you are going to have to retest. So it's clarifying both of those things for candidates as well as EPIs. So Beth, yes, your question, MDE approves this or you allow us to approve it. You said you let us know if you're not going to, this is an option you don't have to take with somebody. If you have some suspicion that their knowledge has really decayed and since they finished their programs, but you inform us that, yeah, we don't want to require this person to test. We verify that that's indeed the test that they took and passed has not changed since they took it, and then you submit the request to Dana, and she makes the change in MOEX to allow them to not get stopped by the robots that check for test dates. All right, so that comes to the end of MDE updates, what we have planned for you. There's about 14 minutes or so between difference between what we had planned and what we were allotted. So we can either take questions now, we can wait for questions later as planned in the agenda, or we can take a break to go to job alike. So turn that to Lori.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I think we have the job alike scheduled to start because of how we organize groups at 10:30, and right now it's 10:06. So if it's okay with you, I think I would like to do the open it up for questions for MDE.
Yeah, happy to take any questions on any of
Joe, we can't hear you if you're talking to us.
There we go. I think my mic was off. I apologize for that. It was flipped up. Sean, Joe Lubig, NMU. just a little bit more context on the House bill from Representative Paquette that I know has been revised multiple times now regarding substitute teachers, and it removes the requirement for 60 hours of college, and it was the original bill, right? Like if you family members, but then it got morphed into something different. But the tone in the Upper Peninsula with the superintendents is they are supporting it through their MASA Region 1 group, but they keep talking about it as it's temporary. And I don't see temporary language in there. Am I missing the temporary language in the bill?
Let's see, Leah, if you're, would you be willing to say more on that bill? Or have more to say?
Morning, everybody. What was that bill number? Which one?
Oh, Leah, what is it? I can't remember the bill number now. It's I have it here.
It's one of the Brad Paquette substitute teaching bills.
So there is one, there's a string, so I'm not sure. One of the bills has a sunset date of 2026 for the allowance of a high school diploma for substitute teaching. We are asking for that to be amended to 2022, but that might be the only one in the string that even has a date, but that appears to be the one that's moving forward.
So that is 4294. Okay, so 2026 right now, and then again, is there? I mean, everything is, the data collection is so messy, right? So, but there's not going to be anything that separates out people, high school diplomas teaching children for the next, if it passes the way it is, for the next 5 or 6 years. And then are they connected to institutions at all if they've taken any college credit from an institution? Like, how does all the data collection work for that relative to our scoring reports and stuff? Or is it, do you think it'll be small enough where we don't need to worry about something like that?
So the same bill that has the clause of the, and I'm looking at the bill you sent me right now, and this isn't the one. And so far this, oh no, this does have 2026 in it. So it also requires the individual to have been employed at the school district for 90 days prior to being able to use this provision. So the idea was, when this bill was developed, it was actually supposed to help this year. It was supposed to help if they had people on staff, like paraprofessionals, and they needed to be able to use those individuals as substitute teachers because teachers were out with COVID for 14 days, or they were trying to run virtual and in person. Over time, of course, people wanted that to go longer because people have this vested interest in having individuals with less than the 60 credit hours in classrooms. But the requirement for pre-employment is still there. So I think it will be less utilized because of that condition. And that's one that the superintendent felt really strongly remained. And we would oppose this bill if that were removed. We also are currently opposing this bill because it doesn't require them to get substitute teaching permits, which is a non-starter according to the department. So right now MDE is opposing. We have asked for changes to at least sunset it a year from now, essentially. And I assume we would continue to impose it if they pulled out the section of prior employment. So essentially what you're looking for is a temporary support from a known employee of the school in an emergency instance is what this is intended to do.
Okay, thanks, Leah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for MDE?
So I'm just curious about and I know it's a partisan bill, but the package put forward by the Dems to kind of do what you just said, Leah, is to support through funding instructional aides, other people to help get them to licensure, to support teachers. Like there seemed to be a whole package of bills. I don't think it's had a hearing or anything yet, but so I'm guessing like something like that. The package of bills doesn't have a shot, but is there any discussion, bipartisan discussion around trying to figure out how to better support folks moving into the profession, or even just removing debt, or those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think there's tons of conversation. I'm not sure anybody has landed on anything. I'm not sure anybody has landed on anything. We have talked about funding for student loan forgiveness. That's something that we've put forward consistently. We've even talked about state salary schedule. That's something that's not moving forward. The ESSER funds, so we're getting a huge influx of ESSER funds that are good for, I think, 3 years. And the state superintendent has been urging school districts to use those to supplement salary, particularly for new teachers transitioning into the profession in their first 3 years of employment. As a bonus structure. They can't be built into the salary schedule, but a bonus structure for things like student loans, and to offset that, brand new time of period where salary is lower than perhaps when they get a bump on the pay scale. Legislatively, I have not seen anything drafted nor been involved in a significant conversation about a drafting of something that would support this. Doesn't mean it's not happening. I just haven't heard it or seen it.
Okay, thanks for that context. I appreciate it.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then we're going to move on. And I just wanted to give you an update that Susan English has been nominated as the chair-elect, and we are very happy to have her in that role. I have had the privilege of working with her on MyPie, and she'll bring a lot to DARTEP. So Susan, thank you for being willing to step into that role, and already we appreciate the work that you've done for MyPie, so appreciate that you're bringing your gifts to DARTEP.
Congratulations, Susan. Good job.
So what we'll do now is we'll just go ahead and go into our break. At 9:30, please be ready to join your job alike meetings. And my understanding is that you'll be put into rooms for those. And so we'll see you back here at 10:30. Welcome back. And right now we will have our report out. I'm going to go ahead and just get started for the deans and directors group. And if you are reporting out for your group, we have 30 minutes, but if you can try to keep it around 7 minutes for your report, that would be helpful so we can move it along. Okay, deans and directors. We talked about a few things. The main ideas were assessment plans, the 5-9-7-12 path program or pathway through that program, content area literacy course, and then we had the longest conversation regarding dispositions. The assessment plans, basically what have others done? And it sounds like most institutions have, when they've submitted their application, the matrix have used or had to tweak the key assessments that they maybe used for CAPE. And then in terms of the grade bands 5, 9, 7, 12, some institutions have talked about a 4+1 program, and that would mean 4 years undergrad plus 1 year to get a master's program. And whether or not schools are including a teachable minor because of the heavy credit load for 5, 9, and 7, 12. Then the question was about, will there still be a content area literacy course and for the 5, 9, 7, 12 grade bands? And the answer is yes, that will still be included, but those standards will be updated. And then our conversation on dispositions started with how are institutions navigating or working with students that have what was referred to as disturbing behaviors, but like regarding equity and justice, and perhaps even students that have very deeply embedded, like based on their upbringings, have not demonstrated or communicated equity and justice in the classroom, and or their approach to considering education and teaching. So how do the questions posed, are other institutions experiencing that? How do you handle these students? Especially, and then we go into dispositions, and the subjective nature of measuring dispositions is a challenge. Beth from Eastern talked about an instance where an individual was removed from the program, and that went to court, and apparently it is legal to be able to drop a student from the program, but also important to lay out expectations very clearly, not only to monitor, but for legal purposes. We also, as a group, talked about offering, or this was raised, Michigan State, I believe, offering to support instructors to include important disposition expectations throughout the curriculum or syllabi. Let's see what else here. Oh, some other challenges were, what about students that have problematic attitudes, who do not reveal themselves, but it comes out in course evaluations. So maybe they understand the system or the disposition system, but go off in their evaluations. We also talked about, the opportunities to have conversations, and that can be a step in the right direction, but that's challenging because it may not impact those beliefs that have been deeply embedded in students that have had a background where they are not, or they don't consider disrupting inequity and advancing justice. And then it was brought up to maybe have further conversations on, and I wrote this down to be able to remember, non-productive stances on equity and justice. That would be one idea. Another is how to help students navigate injustices in schools. So when they go to a field experience and they're a guest, but they see these injustices, how can they navigate that? And then another individual, sorry, I'm not remembering who, oh my goodness, no, Jennifer brought this up from Siena Heights, talked about a 1-credit seminar where they at every level have a seminar where they review code of ethics, dispositions, professionalism in terms of clinical, like when you're in a clinical placement. And then we ended by hearing about some resources that MDE offers. Leah mentioned that she would put that in the chat, that they have some vignettes, like, and if I was understanding correctly, like case studies that we could bring in to our courses, or I think videos that we can deconstruct with students. So just being mindful of some of those resources. Okay, that is my update, or that's for deans and directors. Can we go on to certification officers? And if you are in charge of that section, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Should be Jamie.
Jamie, you still here? Checking the participant list.
Okay. Jennifer, would you like me to move on to accreditation and assessment?
Sure.
Okay, we'll come back to CERT after that. Is there someone from accreditation and assessment that is ready to report out?
That's me.
Oh, so Jennifer, are you ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Okay, so we discussed the AQUIP pilot. And so we had some questions about that Gina answered. One thing that may be important to note is that institutions that agree to pilot AQUIP would still need to maintain their CAPE accreditation, which includes paying the dues for CAPE as well as paying the dues for AQUIP. So something to keep in mind, that there would be a cost there to pilot. And that if for some reason the state decided not to go with AQUIP and the pilot had AQUIP approval, the state, of course, would honor that accreditation approval. And Catherine Wygant from Oakland University is a lead reviewer currently on a AQUIP review and is happy to answer any questions anyone may have about the process. We had some discussion about self-study, just strategies and writing and how you focus on what should be written up for continuous improvement. So that was a nice discussion. MSU and Hope shared some examples. We talked about the new certifications. So those that may be writing the self-study in between the two new programs, where most of your data is going to be on the old certifications. You're not really having data yet for the new. And so trying to present any new data you have with the old data. If you don't have any, to be very clear about that in self-study. And Gina assured us that the state will be working with those site visit teams to help them understand the changes that, that we are implementing here in the state. We talked about possibly, we had talked about previously before COVID, if we could do a common assessment measure for the core teaching practices. So there's no plans for that at this time, but I think there's interest among institutions to consider such an instrument. And then some discussion just about the fatigue we're all feeling between the MD applications and everything that's required for accreditation and COVID and our partners' fatigue, and how difficult that is to ask them for more things when they're struggling. So we talked about that for a little while and talked about the science and social studies being ready and some things. Doug was very generous and talked about his Standard 4 alumni project and how he is collecting those data. So that was a very nice discussion as well. And we appreciate him sharing that.
All right. Sorry, did I cut you off or?
No, I mean, I could go into more specifics, but
Okay.
Doug will share if anybody has questions.
All right, very good. All right, thank you, Jennifer. Let's move on to field placement directors. Do we have someone to report out for field placements?
That's me. I'll be doing it. So Jillian Davidson from Central Michigan, and I'll report out for the field placement directors. So we started sharing a few opportunities for field placement directors and coordinators to share information with one another. Beth from Oakland is collecting some information about supporting candidates post-graduation. And Amanda Bazard from Central Michigan University is organizing an early field experiences Zoom to talk about exploratory clinical. So we shared those resources. Anne from MSU said she will share an EPP form letter about sketches. So that was helpful. So we all kind of started with a sharing, if you will. And then we really transitioned into sharing from our current experiences. And we talked about a lot. Currently, we're all experiencing a lot of requests from principals for things that we would consider kind of outside the norm. And so we really shared about the need to balance caution and care prioritizing our candidates' needs as well as our partners' needs. And so we had a good conversation about that. We talked about the long-term sub flexibility that came out in the fall, and we were wondering if that will remain next year. Each EPP kind of shared their personal experiences. Some have had success with that, some have not. And so we did some sharing about the possibility for student teachers to be hired as long-term subs. We also talked about vaccination requirements and if EPPs were going to be requiring vaccinations of their teacher candidates. We revisited the issues of sketches and how we were handling that for this year as well as next. We did also share about struggles finding fall 2021 placements and how that really connects with what Jennifer was talking about with some fatigue we're experiencing in the profession from our partners, and how it's really hard for teachers who are feeling fatigued and burned out to want to mentor and do one more thing. So we talked about that. We did some sharing about suggestions for combating fatigue and what different universities were doing for that on campus, and whether those things were applicable to people that were in the field, and how different EPPs were supporting candidates in self-care kind of initiatives. And then we kind of wrapped up by sharing how different EPPs were doing seminars, days and times. It seems like most have moved their seminars to be virtual and are happening weekly in the evenings, so outside of the day, which I think was a change for some of us. So that was kind of interesting to hear. And then we also shared about candidates who've had 100% virtual experiences for their student teaching semester or semesters for some of our EPPs that have multi-semester approaches, and how, as prep programs were thinking about what that might look like post-graduation. We shared some of the concerns we're hearing from our candidates, as well as some of our candidates that have either had to withdraw or defer to later semesters because they just didn't feel prepared based off the experiences that they were having. So that's really what we covered. So lots of topics on, kind of the current status of clinical.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Jillian. Good, very good information. All right, let's go back to certification officers. Do we have a report out for certification?
Yep, Jamie's here. You're still muted though, Jamie. There you go. I can't hear you, Jamie, even though you're not muted. Of course.
I'd be willing to report out if we can't fix Jamie's audio.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so in the certification job alike, we first talked about the MDE provided or updated some language in the CPR first aid document, provider's document. We went over that. Krista and Donna stressed if something doesn't look right or feel right to reach out to them to double check, because I believe it was the American Red Cross changed some titles on their cert cards. We talked about retention as far as what the state requires, and then maybe compare it to CAPE and other assessments like the HLC or whomever your institution's area is, in regards to paper files versus electronic files. The state's requirement is 10 years, and we asked them to provide their retention schedule or a link to that, and always suggested to double check with the institution's accreditation. There was some helpful hints when moving from paper files to electronic to always have a second set of eyes, double check what has been scanned. Also to make sure that if you have a two-sided document, both sides are getting scanned, very helpful. The MDE mentioned that they were having conversations about how to bring teachers back into the classroom, because there was discussion on the MTC's 5-year validity extension, how that works, especially with teachers who maybe moved out of state and never got certified or were recommended but never paid for their certification, how to navigate those waters. We brought up, there was discussion on the elementary ed exam, if other institutions were having candidates that were having difficulties and struggling with passing the exam. We talked about maybe there's just certain sections, and across the board, it kind of looked like the math and science were the areas in particular that these candidates were struggling with. We talked about what were some resources that institutions were offering their candidates that were struggling. Some mentioned maybe having a prep course. Others suggested maybe getting students that had passed the test successfully to become tutors for the individuals that were struggling. We brought up there's a 240 tutoring institution that has been marketing. The MDE does not endorse this group and suggested to use the Pearson preparation materials first before going to outside alternatives. And lastly, we talked about the MAMB test and the fact that it's being discontinued, but that the test is still being offered until 2023, but it was not listed on some materials that the MDE provided to us. So they were going to look into getting that listed. And the new test that they're moving to is the MC. Believe that I covered everything, but if not, if someone else could jump in if I missed anything.
Okay, Michelle, thank you very much for that update. So we'll end with, I noticed that there was a question in the chat for MDE. So I'd like to find that, if I can. Okay, here it is from Richard. Does anyone from MDE know? Oh, has that been answered? Okay. Does anyone from MDE know if student teachers can be used as teachers with an assigned mentor in the building for 21-22 school year? Sean, do you want to respond to that, and then we can open it up for other questions?
Yeah, I put a couple notes in the chat. That was not a temporary flexibility. That's something that's always been possible. And different institutions have different policies about this, but so I put the link to the memo that went out last August on it, so it's so everyone can see that that's there.
Any other questions for MDE, comments in general? Although this is specifically for MDE.
I have kind of a general question regarding certification. We didn't get to it in our session, so I'll just open it up to everyone. We have some students who will accidentally take the wrong test, even though we highlight it, stick it on their shirt when they're going, like you're taking this test specifically, and they still take the wrong one. And it's going to get worse with having 2 elementary tests at the same time, 2 groups of health and physical education. There's just a lot. So I don't know how possible this is, but is there a way similar to how we get the eligibility rosters to confirm yes or no they're qualified for that test? Is there a way to get that when they actually register for the test? So like that gets sent to us and we can verify they took the right test, or we could call them and say, you're registered for the wrong test. You're about to spend $129 on the wrong thing. I don't know if that's possible, but just that would be a beautiful situation if we had that.
I don't. Bridget, do you have a comment on that?
No, unfortunately, we don't have a system like that. I think it's been talked about as an idea loosely before to kind of pre-verify candidates. But that is not something that we've been discussing at any point. If you have ideas about how we can help support you in messaging that to candidates, exactly which test to take, I'm happy to do that. We can certainly update the website to add whatever big, red, flashing, bold, anything you want to it. But yeah, we can help control that a little bit.
Okay, and it's mostly surrounding people who completed the program over a year ago or 2 years ago, and they come back. It's specifically for the health and physical ed one right now, just because they come back and they're like, they'll take the new MC tests, like those 2 subtests, but it doesn't correlate with their programs. So we just don't know what to do with them. And it's even worse when they pass that test and we tell them that it's the wrong one.
Hi, Kelly Hodges, MSU. This feels like it's not the same, but it's related to the issue of MTTC and the unique identifier there versus the unique identifier in MOEX versus the unique identifier in institutions CISs. And all of which is, it just makes me think if there was like some way to get all of those things more tightly coordinated, which I appreciate what the challenge is there, then there would be some way for the registration system of MTTC to say, heads up, you're not currently completing a program that's related to that test. Just another thing to put in the pile of the set of problems that will get solved as we all get better at that.
Sean, I have a question about the memo you put up because I was just reviewing it again. And it's a concern because we do have a lot of requests from districts to do this. And one line in it says the approach should not be used to circumvent the hiring of fully credentialed staff. And we've taken that pretty seriously of asking that for verification that they've posted the job and like that. But what is the responsibility? Because I know the superintendents aren't necessarily reading this memo as closely as I was just doing again. And so when I ask them, or when we've asked in the past of, well, what have you done to try to fill this opening before wanting one of our interns to do this? Well, the state memo says we can do it. And I'm just looking for some guidance, some language that I can use as backup.
I don't know if Krista wants to comment on the things that the district has to say and do when they are going through the permit application process, but they have to affirm that they've looked for the position.
Yeah, they get stuck on that. Available for the assignment has been kind of a historic bit of language, and they get stuck on they have to have done their due diligence to find somebody instead of what it means to be available for the assignment. And we have pushed this guidance document, and I'll paste it when I'm done talking, into the chat about what it means to be available. And it's really, it comes down to it. If the district has done what they can and to try and find someone, but they have someone in front of them that could start today, doesn't have a bad reference check and pass the fingerprinting, put them in there. It's just really getting them to shift their mind, their thinking about that piece. The requirements are not what they used to be, where you had to post and you had to advertise, and you had to do certain numbers of things to make sure you put that certification first. Yes, we value certification. We want someone who has a certificate to have first dibs at it. But if you don't have someone who can start today or tomorrow, they're not available to you. And so looking at it from that perspective, I'll share the link, and it makes more sense than my rambling in the chat.
It's just a concern because we've got them contacting pre-interns as they get ready for internship. And it's like, I've looked and there hasn't been a job posting for some of these.
Right.
And it's like, how hard did you really look? And when I see that language in this memo, it's like,
I do recall having a conversation with a smaller school in a rural area where they said, we are looking for a biology, maybe it was science and English teacher. And I'm like, good luck. Yeah, you want one person to have both of those things with a special ed emphasis. You have 5 teachers in your entire high school and you want magic to happen. One of the things you could do is contact your local EPP and see if they have someone that's close in the pipeline that has maybe one of those things. And I know we've talked about this before, that the students coming out of prep programs, they have very specific ideas of what they want. I want biology. I just want biology. But if you take and get just a couple more classes, you'll get science, you'll be more marketable, and you'll be able to fill more positions. Having that conversation with the schools it's kind of the same thing. Target someone who, if you get this endorsement too, it's only a couple more classes and we can hire you right off the bat. Finding someone that fits a niche is what it is. So that might be where some of the things that I've said to schools has started trickling down to you. But finding some teacher that has the perfect combination of endorsements to fill one position is sometimes, I mean, they're looking for a needle in the haystack. So
well,
they need to get better.
Yeah, the stand that Western has taken so far when we consider this is that it has to be in the major, because some of our minors we don't feel are qualified to take on that role initially without all the extra support that we want to provide. But it's a push from the districts, especially since they're having harder times filling positions. And so I almost feel like some of the requests are they breathing in vertical? Can't we have them? And that's getting to be a greater and greater pressure.
I would rather see breathing in vertical with all of your preparation behind them and your supports than breathing in vertical and 60 credits of something, or as we've talked about earlier, just a high school diploma. So they're getting desperate. So keep that in mind.
Has there been talk? I mean, I'm sure there's been talk, but it feels like we're doing a lot to patch the teacher shortage. Or like what's happening on the end of being proactive of making this a better career, like one that pays better and isn't so micromanaged, and that has it. I mean, I know that for some of our students, the real difficulty is that the degree isn't less expensive than other degrees from our university, but the pay that they get coming out of it is. And then we have this issue where in some cases we have the teach grant, but it's up to the university to decide which areas they're going to count. Even though there are a lot of areas that can count, our university doesn't count all of them because of default rates. And they don't want them all to count because they think it will up our default rate. I mean, I keep getting a lot of rhetoric about the teacher shortage and thinking about what we're doing about it. And we're trying to patch it with these alt-cert programs that enroll 15 students here and 12 students here. And we're working individually with the district to get their parapros certified. But it seems like we're going to be constantly catching up on the back end if we're not finding a way to get people in to our programs.
So we at MDE have a whole strategic plan that we've been implementing for at least 5 years now that focus a lot on recruitment into the profession. You heard some of the things that we're doing at the beginning of the DARTEP hour, where we have funds going out for high school recruitment programs to districts. We've built curriculum around those programs. We've removed barriers. So that's, I mean, we could definitely share information with you. There's probably not enough time to do that today, to share all the information that we would like to share around what we are doing. And I don't know if your question was around MDE or around your partners here.
I think it's just in general, because I mean, we've been working on dual enrollment and bringing people in that way. And a lot of things that kind of align with that. But the reality is that we haven't addressed a lot of the reasons why people aren't going into teaching in the first place. So I don't think it's my partners here. I think like, have we found a way to get people to stop bashing the profession or micromanaging people or any of those things? Because I think that's where we're losing people. And people like, we're doing good stuff with all of these interventions to try to get more people in, but I don't know, I'm getting really worried about the state of our state and what's going to happen with the current retirement rate.
I just put in the chat our educator staffing strategic plan, which has a lot of the initiatives that we have been working on and also includes the kinds of things that we hope all of our partners work on in support of this issue. I mean, I can assure you that we've started with research. We've done surveys of educators that have left the profession. We have the information about why and the kinds of things that need to happen in support of increasing and retention. Actually, the biggest problem in Michigan is retention, more so than even attracting people into programs in the first place. So that document should give you a little bit more information, and I'll drop the link to the recent research we published around this as well.
Beth says, encourage you to come to MACT. ACTE will share some specifics of what they are doing. And
there's some specific legislation around the Teach grant, because it really is problematic the way it's done right now, and some things that they're lobbying from the national level, and then there'll be tips on things you can do locally to move forward in that direction. So because you're right, it's a profession, there's a professional challenge, and there's things that we can do as EPPs to help try to streamline some of these things that are best, and so hopefully both they'll come in and share some pearls of wisdom on that. But the things I've heard in the past have been very helpful, so that might be a good start.
And that research is separate from what Leah was referring to.
This is more what they'd be sharing, I think, are some of the specific things that you can do legislatively and trying to move things forward to remove some of the barriers that there's problems with the Teach grant. Also ways of some of these relief funds, trying to partner with our local school districts for them to use those funds to help develop teachers and to work with them through our program.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So they'll be sharing that information.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well then I think we'll wrap it up a couple minutes early, but thank you for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you in October, and we'll make sure that we're in touch before then. Those of you from MDE, thank you so much for taking time to come and answer questions, and the reports are always very helpful. I understand that takes time off your plate, but we really appreciate it. And it's good to be informed and good to have such a collaborative relationship with you. So thank you again. All right, everyone.
I'm going to interrupt, because I think we really have to give Lori a really big round of applause. That managing the DARTEP this year went excellent. It was an example of how to do this work, and I just want to give you a big thank you. And I know you did it with support, but that you were an amazing leader. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Beth. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in October.